Do we need more high-speed rail? Joe Rukin is from Stop HS2. He's the campaign coordinator. Hello, Joe.
Good morning, Nicky.
Yeah, and we've also got, oh yes, Shadow Transport Minister John Woodcock. Mr. Woodcock, hello to you.
Good morning, Nick.
Doug in Maidstone, Graham in Buckinghamshire. Doug, do we need more high-speed rail, Doug?
Yes, we do. Every time you try to build anything in this country, railroad or whatever, there's always opposition. Probably the main problem is that people aren't compensated properly. But, you know, when they started building the railways back in the Victorian times, even before that, there was opposition. But in 15 years, 20 years after it's built, you sort of say, well, how did we do without it? Same with the Channel Tunnel, you know, oh, it's going to cost us too much money. Now people use it all the time, and they become essential, and industry is drawn to them. And you do need to spend out the money. We can't keep sticking stuff on the roads because it's all grinding to a halt.
Is this going to attract industry and commerce to this country?
It will, because, you know, you've got to have things moving quickly and efficiently. And like I say, roads, we can't just keep sticking stuff on the roads.
Okay.
It is needed.
Graham.
Right, yeah, I don't think it's needed at all, basically on a number of fronts. One is the fact that one of the main objections or one of the main concerns is overcrowding. Well, overcrowding appears on local lines more than it does on this high-speed rail. Effectively, it's going to go straight from London to Birmingham, so nowhere in between is it going to be able to people to be able to get on anywhere in between that. And effectively, it's going to start at 33 billion now. By the time it gets built, it'll be double, triple that. And the cost of it, or the cost of the tickets, is going to be for a selected few.
But would you say you wouldn't have built the M1? Would you say you wouldn't have built the Channel Tunnel? Would you say you wouldn't have built London Underground because of the cost?
Those are all new things.
You can't say the cost because the cost, it's not just down to the money spent now. It's for the improvement in the future, and that's what you have to look at.
The benefit for the high-speed rail link is going to be for very, very few people. People turn around and say that, you know, industry will be attracted to the Midlands and going north, which is totally baloney, because basically everybody who wants to be in or around London is where the main thing is. The transport or the freight, yes, you can upgrade the local lines, and freight goes already by rail. So you can actually just increase local lines and get freight moving that way. You do not need a high-speed rail link to get the freight there any quicker.
Joe Rukin from the campaign. Why is this the wrong priority, do you believe?
Well, there's no business case, there's no environmental case, and there's clearly no money to pay for it. You can deliver more benefits to more people more quickly for less money by investing in the existing rail infrastructure. It's an absolute no-brainer. As the second caller was saying, there are massive problems across the entire rail network, and this is serving a very narrow corridor, London to Birmingham, for £17.8 billion at a time at which the country is bust. And this is, you know, who can afford to do a long intercity commute? Sorry, say that again?
There's never a good time to spend that sort of money on large infrastructure projects.
But there's never a good time to spend money on the wrong infrastructure project.
Yeah,
and this is a problem. We've got here... No, the problem is how we've got to this point in time. 2 years ago, Lord Adonis went to the Department for Transport and said, build me the fastest, most expensive railway in the world and justify it. Basically, all the arguments to support it have been constructed after the fact that it was decided that high-speed rail was the answer.
Ultimately...
And you can trace this all the way back to the 2006 Eddington report, which said strong lobbying from advocates makes it politically difficult to cancel, even though there's as many holes in this plan as you could drive a high-speed train through.
John Woodcock, okay, let's examine some of those. So John Woodcock, Shadow Transport Minister. Ultimately, if it reaches Scotland, £32 billion, it's going to shave 1 hour off a journey from London to Edinburgh. Is that worth the money?
Get on your train.
Well, actually, the plans that are being hopefully put in place in this Parliament will actually see journey times to Scotland shortened by an hour. The high-speed line does not need to go all the way to Scotland for those benefits to for those benefits to be realised. Joe is right in one sense, in that yes, this was indeed a project that was put forward by the last Labour government, and it has been it has received substantial scrutiny over the years, and will continue to do so.
You're amusing somebody. We'll find out why. Who's amused?
Take credit for it.
What?
That's all this is about. All the political parties are scrambling to take credit for this without realising what a dead duck it's going to be. It's a white elephant. It's a fast train of fat cats. Like, you looked at the plans that were in the Sunday Times on Sunday, and they're talking about creches, they're talking about bars, casinos, and you're thinking, this is like building the Titanic without the steerage section. The steerage section being the rest of the rail network, which will suffer because all the money will go on this.
John Woodcock.
I think it's really important that we do have a debate now, and we're pushing the government to do this, about the long-term affordability of people being able to use this new line. So far you've taken some credit and you've attempted to start criticising the government. Why not make the case for it for us? Well, if I can get in a sentence without being interrupted, that's exactly what I want to do.
You should have got straight to that. That's what we're talking about here.
So we think that the line needs to be for the many and not the few, and the ticket pricing structure will be an important part of this. But the fact is that we believe there is no credible alternative to the overcrowding which you are already seeing on the West Coast Main Line, which affects the route right the way up to the north of the country, and to Scotland.
Afford him the courtesy of letting him finish the answer, because important things that he wants to put across and some important points to make.
So there is already substantial overcrowding at key times on that route, which, if we're not careful, will be an economic drag on the country rather than a drive over the economic progress that we need. And given that is going to be the case anyway, we've basically got three options. One, we can do nothing and risk the system actually very substantially damaging the economy as need and use for it goes. That's one option. The second option is to try and repeat what we did on the West Coast Main Line through the modernisation programme, which took place over the last decade, which we have to hold our hands up and say was not performed in the right way, and actually put in place substantial disruption over a very long period. Now, the alternative, we believe, to that is to build a new line, and so not only to relieve the overcrowding, but also to significantly reduce journey times in a way which will be of great economic benefit.
Joe, I'll be with you in a minute. I want to bring in Peter, who's called us from Bracknell, and Chris in Darwen. Doug and Graham's still there, but Peter's you worked on the railways for many years, didn't you?
Several years, yes.
Yeah,
that's correct.
Is this money well spent?
No, it needs to be spent on freight, because you get a return on freight, you don't get a return on passengers. Mm-hmm. What's someone going to do with 1 hour extra in London? And is that worth it? Have they done a cost-benefit analysis?
But people travelled on Concorde at a premium to get across the Atlantic 3 hours quicker.
But that's because
people will spend, and the people that go on that line won't be crowding the other lines, and then you get a benefit that way. There's lots of benefits. People don't want this because they stick their head in the sand and they don't want to see development, they don't want to see improvement. They're Luddites. You just stick your head in the sand. You don't want to see anything. The Channel Tunnel.
When you call people names, you know you've lost the argument. You should improve the
All right, let's hear more from Peter. Peter, you make a very interesting point.
You need to improve the Midland Main Line. You need to reinstate the old Great Central Main Line. You need to improve the Marylebone to Birmingham Main Line. Yep. Then, with those improvements, taking the freight off those fast routes, you've got more capacity.
Mr. Rukin, Joe Rukin, tell us about the environmental impact. You mentioned it in your first answer, and it was your second headline.
This is one of the amazing things, that you had that letter on Friday from the union leaders saying, it's going to decrease carbon impacts. But it's like all the things that John said. It's something that sounds like it's probably true, but when you look at the case, there's no facts behind it. All you need to say about the environmental case is this project is opposed by Greenpeace, the Green Party, Friends of the Earth. There is a very, very long list of environmental organisations that oppose this because there is no carbon benefit whatsoever. And because of the speeds involved, one, your energy consumption is much higher, but two, its destructive force on the natural environment is so much greater because it has to be a straight line. You can't put bends in it, so you're looking at 48 ancient woodlands impacted simply by stage 1, and we still haven't got a plan for stage 2 and up to Manchester, Leeds.
John Woodcock, 48 ancient woodlands.
Well, what we're going to hopefully see later today is the outline, the outline of a route, and it is really important that the government is mindful and respectful of the environment in which it seeks to take through this route.
Well, how can you be if you have to put it in a straight line? How can they be respectful?
Well, there are alternatives. One of the things that we have been pressing for the government to do is to consider going via Heathrow in the first instance, in a way which currently the plans are to build a relatively expensive spur on at a latter stage of the project to connect Heathrow to the main line. Now, if you to go to Heathrow, you'd be obviously choosing a different route and potentially with a different and possibly better environmental impact in terms of local environment. But the carbon savings that can come from shifting people from flying to using the train from this are really substantial and need to be considered. What we need to ensure, and what we're pressing the government on today, and will continue to do so, is to make sure that this line goes all the way to the north of England. Because currently, what they are planning to do, if I can just finish this point, what they're planning to do is to take the project in 2 stages and to have a lengthy parliamentary process to approve the route to Birmingham, and then an entirely separate process at some point in the future to go north of Birmingham to Manchester and Leeds. And that raises substantial doubt about their commitment to go all the way to the north, and that needs to happen.
Well, Joe is huffing and puffing like an old steam train in the background.
Yeah, well, that's it. John's finding himself a Northern MP being a cheerleader of something that probably, as he said, is only ever going to get as far as Birmingham. But just going back about what he said about...
The first phase alone is going to create more than 40,000 jobs and contribute to major regeneration programmes.
For £17.8 billion, Nicky. 17.8 billion for just 40,000 jobs, and they aren't all new jobs. Like 10,000 of those are just keeping on the guys who are currently building Crossrail, and it's going to be transformative for the north-south divide. Well, hang on, how come 75% of those new jobs are in London? And of course they're probably double counted because those are jobs at Old Oak Common with the station, which of course Crossrail surely was meant to have brought those jobs. But just what John said about capacity, right, you've got the problem of capacity all across the country, and they're saying this cannot solve the capacity crisis any other way. We are saying just have longer trains. You can double the capacity on every train out of Euston with longer trains, 12 carriages. In the days of steam, we used to have 16. But they say that having longer trains is going to be disruptive.
You're going to fight this all the way, aren't you? Yeah. I'm going to take one more...
Hang on, wait, just one tiny thing, Nicky.
You can come back with it, but go on.
Okay, HS2 knocks down Euston Station. 8 years it will take to rebuild that.
Really?
Yes, 8 years. The buffers end up where the bus stops are now. And they're saying that HS2 won't disrupt, the rail network. What rubbish! That's going to affect every single train.
Is this John Woodcock? This sounds like poppycock, John Woodcock.
Well, there will need to be substantial regeneration of Euston, of course, and
that's going to be so disruptive.
Well, it needs to be done in the least disruptive way possible. But we think a far more disruptive thing would be to essentially to rebuild the entire West Coast main line.
Deliberately misunderstanding what we are saying, John.
Which would
deliberately misunderstanding. We're saying longer trains. How does that mean disruption? You just take the train to the yard, you unhitch it, you rehitch it, job done.
Well,
That's it. How is that disruptive?
That would be a separate thing. But the
people at Bombardier while you're doing it.
But the difficulty with that is, of course, that you would need very substantial investment to modify and improve platforms, make them much longer up and down the country.
Where we.
All right, let me come back to
Only
Peter.
Liverpool can't manage 12 carriages.
Wait, Peter in Bracknell, you were coming back.
The gentleman on the pro side knows nothing about railways. Sorry, the guy who says longer trains, absolutely right. Total waste of money. It's going to cost more than 32 billion anyway, as someone said previously, because construction projects always do. As I said, you need to improve what we have. The richest state in Europe, that's Switzerland, that does not have high-speed trains, has no intention of.
It's not as big as us.
Does not need.
No.
Well, we're not big
and that's
either.
the reason
We're not big either.
We're long.
We're not big enough.
Chris
We're not even 1,000 miles.
Chris in Darwen. Chris.
Hello.
Hi.
Yeah, let's look at a couple of things that we know for a fact. Countries like in Germany, more freight on the railways, running up and down both sides of the Rhine consistently, nearly 24 hours a day. We need to get more freight on the rail.
Absolutely.
And also, in getting cars off the road, we make, and probably could have saved the money it cost to build the toll road on the M6. I've heard a lot of talk about down Birmingham, Manchester. Hello, up in Lancashire, we're north of Manchester. Let's get the West Coast Line improvements finished. We need to run our railways more efficiently.
Yep,
Let's not have a
absolutely.
big project, because we can't manage big projects. We make a mess of them.
Okay, Chris, thank you very much. It's 9:23 very nearly. We'll come back to you, Joe, and we'll come back to Mr. Woodcock. It's 9:23. I've already told you that. And we're talking to Tom in Wigan, and we are talking to Ian in Penrith and Peter in Basildon. We also have, for a few more moments, we have John Woodcock, the Shadow Transport Minister, and the very passionate voice of Joe Rukin from the Stop HS2 campaign. He is the coordinator, as a text goes off in the background. It's very busy. Peter in Basildon, on you go.
Hello, Nicky. Interesting. A lot of pros and cons being put forward here, and I'm fundamentally a railway enthusiast. I'd like to see Britain having the same sort of high-speed network that there is in Europe. I'm not sort of buried in the age of steam, but this one, it just doesn't work. Right at the very start, we had a sort of a political thing. Well, it was dreamt up by Labour, and now the Conservatives want to pinch it and that sort of thing. This shouldn't be anything to do with politics. It should be to do with practicality. And HS2 simply isn't practical. We have a situation across Europe where they've got wonderful trains, and the businessmen that we are meant to be attracting by having our own wonderful trains...
Businessmen and business ladies.
And business ladies, indeed, and I beg their pardon, are going to have their, across Europe, supersonic trains arriving at St Pancras and have to walk down the road to Euston. Well, come on. I mean, fundamentally, it doesn't even connect.
Mm.
I mean, that's point one.
Well, that's point one. Ian in Penrith, do you want to speak to Peter about this?
Well, first of all, I'm from a railway background. I know how the game works. Now, I've seen the benefits that TGV has brought to regions in France. I've spent time in Brittany, which was a bit of a backwater, so to speak. And if you talk to people there, serious business people, they say things really started to improve when we got our TGV. Mm. And I'm in a bit of a remote area up here. We need something to boost our economy. There's no doubt about it. I'd like to see us going up there and joining the French rather than being dragged down into the dirt all the time.
See, that's just another one of the arguments that doesn't hold the water. Because if you look at people say, look at France. And yeah, we looked at France. Lyon, unemployment higher than French national average. Lyon, when the TGV moved there, more businesses moved to Paris. And that's what it's going to be about. It is going to be about getting to London. All the academics say the ideas that this will have regenerative effects, it will transform the economy, are rubbish. Philip Hammond, the last Transport Secretary, admitted that this means putting Birmingham in Zone 3 of the Underground. And that's what it's about. It's about getting to London. And, of course, you can kiss the green belt between Birmingham and Coventry goodbye, because that is just going to be filled up absolutely completely with the development due to the Birmingham airport.
Ian, do you want to come back on that?
The TGV, I want to see it get to Manchester, the HS2 could get to Manchester, and then those trains can continue from Manchester into the outside world, so to speak.
Where's that?
This is what the French do with TGV. It runs to a particular place, then it runs along the normal railway to the small stations out in the wilds, and it gives them a direct link into Paris and into Charles de Gaulle Airport.
Metropolis, yes.
I'll tell you what. Do you want me to tell you what Guillaume Pepe, the president of SNCF, says about it? He said that we run the risk of having more and more miles of high-speed rail that are used by fewer and fewer people. And the other thing you've got to remember with that, another quote from Pepe, but about 10 years ago, the TGV was subsidised to the tune of about 1% of the French GDP. They cut the subsidy, fare prices have gone up, and Pepe has again said that the idea of the TGV being the normal means of travel for the masses and not the preserve of the business elite is at an end. Look at what the Sustainable Development Commission said before they were abolished in the cuts. The very last thing that came out of them, besides saying this is unsustainable, was it means putting in a massive ongoing subsidy to something that only benefits the richest in society.
Tom in Wigan.
Because of course it does. Who can afford intercity prices from London to Birmingham in peak hours?
Tom in Wigan.
Who
Hi,
is it
Tom.
for?
Hi, Tom.
Morning, Nicky.
Put a point to John Woodcock, the Shadow Transport Minister.
Yeah, it's a simple point. It's a point of fact, not of ifs and maybes. I live in Wigan. I can get to London 2 hours on the train at the moment, the North West line. If I go by car, it's going to take me 4 hours if I'm lucky, probably 5 or 6 when I hit the traffic jams in Birmingham. So the current situation is 2 hours is okay. If you stick in a high-speed line, what's it going to save me? Half an hour, so what? If I go to Manchester, which is about 20 miles away on the train, it'll take me over an hour on the train, and it's like a cattle wagon. Please spend this money on the local lines, and also getting a bit of the freight onto the train lines as well.
Yeah, look, it's a really good point, and as you may know, my constituency is Bowen-Furness, a bit further up the country on the northwest from you, and going cross country can be an absolute nightmare in this country, and across the northwest is no different. That's why the Northern Hub and making the investment in that, which is in the process, in the bidding round currently for the budget, is really important to do, and this should not be an either or. I mean, if this were the case of simply spending on High Speed 2 and no further investment in the rail network of the UK, then that would be entirely different. Now, it isn't, but we should not lose the ambition to connect different parts of our economy and connect parts which would otherwise struggle to progress with the main drivers of economic growth and economic progress in the country.
Peter in Basildon.
Really important. Can you explain what's going to be the improvement of getting me from Wigan to London any quicker than 2 hours when there's no other way of doing it? I mean, I can't go by. If I go by plane from Manchester, it's going to take me over an hour to get to Manchester to catch a plane.
And then you've got the checking in and everything like that.
It's no-brainer. You've seen 2 hours. You can't complain 2 hours to travel 200 miles. It's an absolute superb service.
It's amazing, yeah.
Well, it's much better.
It's about priorities. Government's about priorities. And I'm in a building in Kenilworth that the council let us use because it was derelict, because they bought it as part of their station building programme. And guess what? They didn't get the money. So they were stuck with a building that they couldn't use because it was part of their long-term plan.
John Woodcock, last word, because I know you have to go. We're going to get the announcement soon. Will this happen, John Woodcock?
Well, what we are offering today is a political consensus for the project which we brought forward in government. I think that's really important. It's important that politicians continue to have a consensus and show willing on this. But it's also really important that scrutiny continues. And as I think we have heard in surround sound today, that level of scrutiny is not going to go away. It's going to remain lively as it should be, so that we can make sure we get the right solution direction when this rail line is eventually in place.
Great. 5 Live in surround sound. I like that. Yeah. So we're going to have to leave it there. We have got Simon with the weather, but listen, much more on this to come, and we're going to be hearing the announcement as well, getting the announcement or confirming the announcement, whatever. Hello, Christian Wolmar.
It's a shame these days. They used to have press conferences for this thing and these sort of things, and you could ask ministers what the plans were.
Stop right there.
Them, but now they put things on the website.
Stop right there. The government has approved a scheme to build a brand new high rail line, initially between London and Birmingham, £17 billion cost. Then on to Leeds and Manchester, £32 billion cost. It's added 8 miles of tunnel or green tunnel as a result of the consultation, which closed in October 2011. There will now be an extra bit of green tunnelling, 1.4 miles just north of Amersham, which is Welsh Secretary Cherry Gillen's constituency. It goes on, so that's been confirmed. What's the problem with this?
Well, I mean, we'd like a press conference to discuss these issues, ministers kind of up to account and stuff. There's a lot to discuss there. I mean, this has been widely trailed as well. It's been kind of leaked over the weekend, hasn't it? And it's not a very democratic way of doing things. These are very controversial plans, and the idea of extra tunnelling is going to certainly add cost, one would have thought.
Paul in Hayes.
Yeah, I'd like to know what job does he do for a living? Because, the 32 billion that's going to be spent, it's going to be spent on electricians, on engineers, on people at this moment in time who need work, yeah? It's going to be done for the people, the working class people of this country. What does he do for a living?
Well,
is he finding it hard to pay for his mortgage? We need this sort of work, this sort of investment within this country. What is that?
I mean, the point about that is that if you spend government money, you can always create jobs. I mean, that's easy. You can create jobs, in the defence industry if you create bombs or whatever. But ultimately that has to be paid for by taxpayers. And the question is spending this amount of money a good idea on this scheme, which may well cost £32 billion? It may well cost more at the end of the day.
The money is getting paid to the people, the workers of this country, yeah? So we can pay for our mortgages, so we can have the high lifestyle that you probably got.
Well, some of it might actually go to China. They might buy the trains from China, for all we know, or get Chinese engineering companies to build it. So we have no idea whether the money will stay here.
So what you're saying is they're going to ship Chinese engineers over here? No, I don't think so. The 32 billion is going to be spent on this country for us. We're in bad times. The working class need work, yeah? And we need to invest in this country. The money is in this country.
I mean, I tend to agree with that, but work isn't going to start for another 5 years, and we're at the depth of the recession now. So if you wanted to do things, you should do things more quickly.
I don't care about that. 5 years' time, I'm happy to go and go and do my business on the railways. I'd be happy with that. 5 years' time, it gives me a boost in life. It makes me think, yes, the country's at least investing in us, the working class.
Instinctively as a rail supporter, I'd like to say, yes, let's do this. But, it's so much money. The business case is very weak. The actual numbers they kind of use to justify it. And there are alternatives to improve the West Coast Main Line, which, it's all very well saying it's full, but actually it's not full. Most trains are not full. Yes, there's some trains that are full at 7 o'clock on a Friday night from Euston, but that's because of the fare structure. So I'd like to see a proper assessment of the alternatives before, the decision is made to spend this massive amount of money on one line.
We need this sort of level of infrastructure build, and we need to go further. We need to develop a proper infrastructure that covers the whole of the West Midlands, not just London to Birmingham.
But there's no reason why necessarily the West Midlands will get an economic boost. This turns Birmingham almost into a suburb of London. So it may well, and a lot of economists think this, it may well suck a lot of the economic benefits down south and actually turn places like Birmingham into dormitory towns rather than stimulate growth there.
Wait a minute, Pete Waterman. Good morning, Pete.
Good morning.
Rail enthusiast. Tell the nation. Tell the nation why this is a good idea.
tell me why it's not a good idea. And ask Christian why he rides a bike and why he lives in the south. He definitely doesn't live in Warrington because he couldn't use his bike, and he definitely doesn't live in Birmingham. I mean, you know, what I'm hearing is nonsense. The West Coast, I travel on it 4 times a week. We can't put any more on it. And to waste money trying to upgrade something that we should have built a new railway in 1960, and then we wouldn't be having this debate. This railway line is 60 years late.
Christian.
Well, you know, yes, we could argue all day about, you know, when we should have built more rail lines and so on. But the fact is that this is, you know, Britain's biggest ever engineering project with a very limited number of stations on it. So it's going to encourage people to drive to those stations. It's not going to provide, you know, rail services for large numbers of people. It's actually, you know, a corridor for, you know, people who will be able to afford what are likely to be quite high fares.
You know, Christian obviously writes about transport. He obviously doesn't believe in people moving about. It's a bit like the Duke of Wellington, who thought that all of us Northerners were oiks and we shouldn't be allowed to move about. This changes it back.
That's really not right. I mean, it's just just because I don't think that this particular project is the right one doesn't mean that I'm not a great supporter of the railways, which I use all the time. It's just this project is going to suck up all the rail investment over the next few years.
You use the same argument all the time. It's time we built a new railway. It is unfortunately it's called High Speed 2. It should be called Route 1. Then we wouldn't be having an argument about people that only rich people can afford to use it. It's simply misleading and simply not true. I heard this morning on the couch with you an auntie claiming that High Speed 1 doesn't work. I've just watched High Speed 1 leave Ebbsfleet full to standing. These figures do not work. They are nonsense. Let's build the railway, put people on it, and change the face of Britain for the first time.
Absolutely.
Well, you know, the problem is that it's going to absorb such a vast amount of money. There won't be any for other rail projects, and that's a fact.
Yeah, that's not true, Christian. You're building the Northern Hub. You're electrifying the West Coast.
You watch what they're going to say over the next few years when we get a government, you know, committed to austerity. They're going to say, well, we're building this high-speed line. We can't afford to improve the rest.
We've had governments since 1940 telling us that we can't afford more railways. We have a fantastic railway system for the first time, and it's starting to work, and it's time we got into the 21st century and built a brand new railway. Let's get on with it and stop talking. Let's employ people and get people moving.
Well, I mean, one of the points is that this won't be built till 2026, so we need to do a lot of the other things anyway, and, you know, I bet that there just won't be the money to do that.